This next couple of segments are pretty graphic. If you've got kids in the house, if you're sensitive to yourself, be careful. The stories are graphic, so we're going to be talking graphically. Hope you enjoy.
This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. I am he, and I am joined today by Vicki McKenna. Vicki, always good to see you.
Great to be here.
You and I have talked about some unbelievable stuff, but the stuff we're going to talk about today, I mean, it pushes the borders of anything we've brought up before. It's this stupid and dangerous. We're going to start with a story, and it's interesting how it's a UK newspaper actually broke this story, not the American media, for reasons that we understand. We have an exclusive. The trans school conspiracy exposed. We have Midwest teachers in this country trading tips on the internet on how to subvert and undermine and quietly transition kids without telling parents, and skirting all Republican gender laws in a workshop that was funded by the federal government of the United States.
Yeah. So it's a conglomeration, in this case, of Midwest teachers. So presumably there are other groups. They call themselves MAP. Midwest teachers, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, Heartland teachers. And what the whole purpose of this discussion was driven toward was, let's share ideas on how we can subvert the law and how we can foreclose parental notification if we have decided that we know better than parents to protect the trans child. So it was including everything from, create secret computer screens and don't show them to parents. Let parents see certain portions of your computer screen, but not the portion where you have, reimagined Johnny as Sally and the things that you are doing in order to promote the idea that he is a boy or he is a girl. It was declaration after declaration. Parents are wrong. Parents don't know. These laws are terrible. And my conscience and my personal ethics demand that I work to subvert these laws. And all these parents are trading, teachers are trading ideas, role playing the subversion, role playing the deceit. And it was funded, as you say, by the federal government. Not just a little bit, not $100,000. $8.5 million in a grant from the Department of Education is supporting this effort. If you don't think at this point your kids are part of this because you trust your school or you trust your teacher, you are deluding yourself. They're all part of this. The Department of Education federally is part of this. The Department of Public Instruction here in Wisconsin is part of this. It is everywhere. There is no escape.
This is the story from the Daily Mail of the UK. They gained access to an online session hosted by the Midwest and Plains Equity Assistance Center, the MAP, which is funded by the Department of Education, attended by some 30 teachers from Michigan, Iowa, Ohio, and Illinois, and beyond. In the 4-hour workshop, they discussed helping trans students in the face of new laws in Republican states on gender, pronouns, names, parents' rights, bathroom access, and sports teams. Some teachers said they followed the rules, but others discussed being subversive, how their personal code of ethics, according to these teachers, trumped laws, and how to hide a trans student's new name and gender from their parents. This is outrageous. So of course, if this was any other field of endeavor, these people would be fired. If you were doing this, subverting your company, if Google and all these radical lefty tech giants, if people were doing that to them, as we saw with Twitter, they would be fired. But only in education and only in our public schools does this allowed to go. And people, the teachers unions will defend this. Joe Biden, Cardona at the Department of Education, they paid for this. So they're not going to do anything.
No, despite the fact that these are teachers that are calling for overt violation of state law. and federal law as well, it's irrelevant. That nothing, I mean, not only are they not going to be punished, they are going to be rewarded. These are the teachers that were selected to participate in this. So presumably these teachers are considered somehow leaders in the various schools they represent. So again, this is not, I mean, what do you need? It's proof. Your kid's school is part of this too. The Federal Department of Education is funding it. If you want to escape or to protect your child, there is one answer, and that is get your child out of the public schools, period. Fighting back on school boards, I'm for it, and it's great, and it has been having an effect locally in some local districts. But I'll give you an example where fighting back for a local school board and control of a local school board ultimately did not deter, even though policies were passed by that local school board, did not deter a teacher from moving forward and subverting the policy, subverting the ordinance. And that was here in Wisconsin, in Waukesha. In the city of Waukesha, conservatives took over the school board. This is a largely conservative area anyway, but it had been controlled by leftists. Conservatives took over the school board. They passed some really good policies that would mandate transparency of curriculum, policies that would put the parents back in the driver's seat, even though it's already codified in state law. And an elementary school teacher didn't care. She didn't care so much that she publicized herself as she demanded to use her first grade students in a performance of a song to promote transgenderism. And when the school board and the principal said, wait, we've got this policy, when the principal pushed back, she went to social media. She, got Hollywood people and the entire country to attack this principal, to attack the people who were pushing back against her. Did she get fired? No, she did not get fired. And this is a conservative school board passing a policy with an administrator attempting to implement a policy. She knew that there was nothing anyone could do to touch her.
Yeah, you and I have been saying for years that by all means, yes, take over the school boards. By all means, that's not yes. It's the only access point moms and dads have. However, if anybody thinks that's going to fix this problem, they're wrong. Let me share with you a couple instances of what you just said. Teachers bragging about this. Teacher Jennifer Hagland, counselor for Ames Community Schools in Iowa, which serves 5,000 K-12 Iowa kids. She complained about Republican Governor Kim Reynolds in March signing a law that bars biological males from competing on female sports teams. She bragged about her own activism and about taking part in protest marches. I know, she said, quote, I know I have my own right code of ethics, and that doesn't always go with a law, right? So my personal ethics matter more. Shay Martin, an Ohio-based trans educator who writes for a socialist, feminist, and anti-racist blog called Radical Teacher, she said she openly works against the laws that prohibit and restrict trans advocacy. Right now, your public schools are simply places of radical LGBTQ, CRT, and let's be very clear, you blow the smoke away. This is the socialism takeover of your kids' schools. All of this is under the shield of radical socialist transformation.
Well, and what is it doing? It's displacing actual education. I mean, across the country, but specifically here in Wisconsin, reading comprehension, reading proficiency in the state of Wisconsin is around 33 to 35%. Think about that. Math proficiency is around 33 to 35%. So 65% plus kids cannot do math or read at grade level. But the most important thing is to make sure that the K-12 public schools become these bastions of trans indoctrination and CRT indoctrination. Look, mom and dad, you think, well, my kid gets good grades on his reading assignment. It is highly likely your kid is part of the 65%. I'm just telling you that. They will lie to parents. They will say that there is success when there is institutionalized and deeply funded failure. And as long as maybe it looks like your kid got an A, they figured that you'll just keep your mouth shut. And the fact that most people don't ever want to confront teachers or administrators. That's one of the many ways they get away with it, is complacency among the people who ought to care.
Yeah, and still to come, the creator of the intersex inclusive pride flag has unveiled yet another iteration that is turning heads even from those in the gay community. What you just heard is bad. What you're about to hear is worse. So we'll be right back.
Today's episode is brought to you by Freedom Project Academy. Take back your kids' education. FPA's fully accredited classical curriculum provides live, on-demand, and homeschool courses built on Judeo-Christian values. Request your information packet and save 10% on tuition by visiting freedomforschool.com. That's freedom, F-O-R, school.com.
Back now with Vicki McKenna, and this segment is going to be tough to get through, Vicki. It's pretty shocking. We're not going to show you the most graphic aspects of what we're going to talk about. That will be a link at the bottom of this video. So if you want to see it, we won't show you some of what we're about to talk about. I want to warn you that if you have kids, the next two segments here, short segments, are not going to be for them. So be careful about that. So I want to prove to you that the LGBTQ has nothing to do with the rights of trans people. It is something much more disgusting. This was triggered in Canada, right? Canada's a few years farther down the road, but we're catching up to them in their licentiousness. This is a tweet that says, this quote, "This is how sick our government-run education system is." And they go to the next slide, Mike. They begin to talk about how, and on Monday, June 19th, the Health 9 classes in this Canadian school, they had a presentation provided by Planned Parenthood. The target of the lesson related to contraceptives, sexually transmitted infections, and consent. During the presentation, the classroom teacher was always in the room. In addition to the presentation, students did have an opportunity to obtain secondary resources from a side table that were not referred to during the presentation. Staff do preview resources, but one of the resources consisted of an A to Z sexual vocabulary game, which was not in the scope of the grade 9 health curriculum. These basically cards where they had A to Z, and on them they talk about, like this one. This one is a little bit dangerous to show too. Using sex is the name of the game. From A to Z cards during outreach and other single session behavioral interventions. So these are not just meant for the classroom. They are to be given to individual children, where a guidance counselor or an administrator or a teacher can sit down one-on-one with a child and give them these cards and go through them. Take a look from this first one. Sex from A to Z is a set of cards intended for gay, bi, and queer people, which means most kids aren't that. They're still going to get these. This is a fun and accessible resource that facilitates humorous and frank discussion among young people about sexuality and HIV and STI prevention. It can also be used by service providers as a discussion tool in workshops. Now, Vicki, pick a couple of these cards by the letter and let's talk around them, because we can't even say on the air what they really say.
Okay, right. So these are A to Z cards. On one side of the card are little cartoon pictures of animals, doing silly things. So on one side, you will see maybe a monkey or a bird or an insect of some kind doing something silly. You flip the card over, and I tell you what, because people are going to have to look this up for themselves. I will just read through starting at A, and I will quit when I find myself too disgusted to continue. A is for autofellatio. Sorry, I'm not describing that. You look it up. B is for bisexual. C is for cathodelia, which is a fetish. By the way, what I'm basically reading right now are phrases, most of which are associated with hardcore gay porn. Z is for zagnut. So I'm sorry, I skipped a couple of letters. That's another one you don't want to look up. All of these, and these are incredibly graphic descriptions of what actually takes place. And if your ninth grader were ever to see these words and then read these descriptions, good bet he or she is going to look them up. And you have just invited 13 and 14-year-old kids to view hardcore gay porn.
And of course, we are not going to discuss what those words mean. And if you want to see these cards with your own eyes, there will be a link to them at the bottom of the video when it's posted.
Want to read these? I do. I want to read these. I want people to know what the hell is being taught in the public schools. And this is coming from Planned Parenthood and presented in a public school. And if I may, Duke, and then I'll stop. In Wisconsin, Planned Parenthood develops the sexual education curriculum for many schools and is permitted by DPI, the Department of Public Instruction, to do so.
Yep. And the big problem here, Vicki, and these you cannot imagine how disgusting and debasing and dehumanizing the issues discussed in these cards are for children. Having said that, the bigger question is this. Why is it that when we talk about gay, bi, transgendered kids, right? Why is it that the progressive elite, and that includes our teachers, why is it that they always associate gay relationships, trans relationships, sex between lesbians or bi men, always in the most absolutely extreme forms of sexuality? Why isn't this about love or trust or communication? Why isn't this about
right?
Well, right. So and notice the implication we're teaching kids. Heterosexuality is boring. It's missionary sex. It's boring. It's lame. It's unimaginative. It's childish. It's repressive. It's Puritan. To be gay, trans, bi, lesbian means you could engage in the worst kinds of extreme sex. Dangerous, reckless sex. Some of the things that, most of the things that are listed on these cards is physically dangerous. Dangerous to the point.
Well, yes, I'll give you one. Yellow and brown showers. Look that one up if you dare. This stuff is dangerous. It is dangerous in the form of potential to spread STIs. It's dangerous because it could cause serious infection, possibly sepsis and death. It is depraved. This is depraved sex. This is the kind what it is. It's obscenity. It actually is obscenity. You know, we're not supposed to expose children to obscenity, but it's actual obscenity. So, which is why we can only go so far in describing this, because we're restricted from it. As you know, we heard the famous Supreme Court case. Obscenity is wrong. We can't expose people to obscenity, and I'll know it when I see it. Well, you'll see this deck of cards and you'll know it.
Yep, this is the word that we can use is scatological. I mean, this is scatology.
Yes.
This is human waste being used as some kind of sexual fetish and kink. And believe it or not, there are even worse things in these cards. So this is why we have to tell you this. You got to get your kids out. Look, this is not just mentally and soul crushing for your kids. All of this radical sex, it is worse than that. They are promoting behaviors that are reckless sexually, that are dangerous, that are physically compromising. They're not stopping at this, right? This is not just being open-minded about alternative forms of sexual identification.
This is grooming. It's grooming. Period. It's grooming.
And it is physically debasing and dangerous. So they're not just coming for your kid's soul and mind and heart. They are coming physically for their bodies. How you could justify keeping your kids in schools like this it's increasingly impossible to make those arguments. I'll give you the last words.
And I will say, it is highly likely that Planned Parenthood has been tapped to advise your child's human growth and development or sexual education curriculum. And these cards were distributed by Planned Parenthood in the school. This is not just physically debasing. This is spiritually debasing. This is mentally debasing. You're essentially, in many of these descriptions, asking kids to think being raped would be kind of fun.
Yep. Yep, and the kind of things that they're asking you to do sexual, if it was done in a prison or a concentration camp or the Nazi experiments, we would condemn it. But because we're dealing with the LGBTQ, and of course they have no end, according to the left, there are no boundaries, there are no decencies, there are no modesties. Right? So when they do it, now, of course, this is wonderful. We had another story that we're just not going to have time to get to you. We'll get it for you next week, and that's going to wrap up the show. If you have any questions, comments, or you need a vomit bag, or you simply want to support the show, simply visit drdukeshow.com. For all of us at the Dr. Duke Show, thanks for watching. It's not always easy, but we'll see you next time, and please handle this information carefully, especially with your kids. We'll see you next time.